Now this is time for valedictory session, and in this session we have speaker Braj and Sinha sir, and this session is being presided by D.A. Gangadhar sir, Professor D.A. Gangadhar sir. So first of all, I would like to invite respected speaker of this session, Professor Braj and Sinha sir. Is he online? Has joined?
చెప్పండి అందరితో పని లేదు ఎవరైనా ఇది సెంటర్ నా ఫోటోగ్రాఫ్ సెంటర్ అనుకోండి అంతే నేను వాడికి చెప్పాను చెప్తే నాట్ దేర్ ఐ ఆస్క్డ్ హిమ్ టు మేక్ ఇట్ ఎ ఫోల్డర్ ఫర్ ఈచ్ ఇయర్ వైస్
He has not joined so far.
I think tomorrow we'll sit down.
Okay, sir. So let me give a brief introduction of Braj and Sinha sir. He is founding head of the Department of Religious Report. So I would like to call upon Dr. Neeti Singh to present report, conference report. Please come. Thank you, Dr. Kalpana. And good evening, everyone, once again. And despite a very hectic schedule and a tight day, we have successfully organized this conference. And now it's time to have a look on the whole program. So this brief report of the conference that I'm going to present now is being prepared with the help of some of the research scholars of our department. They are Ms. Rajalakshmi Tiwari, Ms. Kajal Pandey, Ms. Siddhidatri, and Mr. Abhinav Tiwari. So we have had one inaugural session, one special session for guests speech, two parallel technical sessions, excluding this valedictory session. In our inaugural session, we listened to Professor Daniel Rave speaking on the differences between Sāṅkhya and Yoga philosophies. He reflected upon some of the similar findings in K.C. Bhattacharya's philosophy. He mentioned in his lecture short-term and long-term karmas, meditation techniques, and their importance in yoga tradition. He also included some of the yogic traditions found in Vedanta and Buddhism. After Professor Rave, we listened to Professor Pratibha Graman, who spoke on the distinctions between Sāṅkhya and Vedanta philosophies. She explained the different notions of consciousness in Sāṅkhya and Vedanta traditions. She emphasized that the Sāṅkhya is the main philosophy behind yoga, which takes us to the path of liberation. The session was presided over by Professor S.R. Bhatt, who gave his remarks critically over both the speakers of the session. The session was compared by me, Neeti Singh. Just after the inaugural session, we had a special session for guest speech, wherein Professor Shashikant Dwivedi from Sanskrit Vidya Dharma Vigyan Sansthan B.H.U spoke on the importance of yoga asanas and said that asana is the first step in Hatha Yoga. He threw light upon the importance of the Anushasan, that is discipline in yoga, and talked about the theoretical and practical necessity of Anushasan in yogic practices. Dr. Dinanath Pandey was the next speaker who presented his radical views about academic philosophy. He differentiated among Sāṅkhya philosophy, Sāṅkhya darshan, and Sāṅkhya shastra, and concluded that yoga is neither a philosophy nor a darshan nor a shastra. He also accused yoga philosophy that it is only a science to keep our body healthy and nothing more than that. The third speaker in that session was former professor of Department of Philosophy and Religion, Professor Devbrat Chaube, who spoke on the importance of yoga philosophy and discussed Yam at length in his talk and established the importance of Ashtanga Yoga to achieve Kaivalya. Then we listened to Professor Kripa Shankar, former head and professor in the Department of Philosophy and Religion, B.H.U. He discussed Niyam in detail and also talked about Vivek Khyati, Kaivalya, and relationship of Sāṅkhya and Yoga as allied systems. He responded to Dr. Dinanath Pandey as well on some points. At last, Professor Krishnakant Sharma, former Dean Faculty of SVDV B.H.U, presided over the session and gave his critical remarks over the 4 speakers. He refuted and discarded all the accusations of Dr. Dinanath Pandey raised about yoga philosophy. The session was compared by Dr. Shruti Mishra, assistant professor in this department and convener of the conference, of course. Total 21 papers were presented in 2 parallel technical sessions. In technical session 1, total 10 papers were presented, while in technical session 2, there were total 11 papers presented. 3 papers were added at the last moment of the session. So these 2 technical sessions were compared by Dr. Rahul Kumar Maurya and Dr. Priyanka Mishra respectively. And papers were presented in all 3 languages, Sanskrit, Hindi, and English. So let me briefly give you an overview of the papers presented in parallel technical sessions. In technical session 1, that was held in hybrid mode here in this seminar hall. So the first speaker, Dr. Lalit Saraswat, assistant professor in IIT Kanpur, spoke on the topic, a comprehensive cognitive epistemological explication on tanmatras. Dr. Saraswat had rightly pondered over the dynamism of emergent evolution while taking the recourse to the causality with compliance of cognitive dimensions of tanmatras in Sāṅkhya system. The second paper was presented by Dr. Baleshwar Prasad Yadav, assistant professor in the Department of Philosophy and Religion, B.H.U, Varanasi. And he talked about the systems of Sāṅkhya and Yoga philosophies, some observations on their alliance. And Dr. Yadav made a general sketch about the alliance of Sāṅkhya and Yoga and synchronized the 2 different approaches regarding the cosmic foundation of this allied philosophy system, and also reflected over the strata of duality and parallel quest of alliance in the domain of Sāṅkhya school. The next paper was presented by Dr. Rajiv Lochan Behera, assistant professor in this department, and he delivered his paper on the topic mechanism of yoga and its relation to macrocosm harmony, a philosophical discourse. And Dr. Rajiva took the recourse to the Platonic thoughts of harmony and mooted out the system of microcosm and microcosm strata of yoga, because that echoes in the thoughts of Anaximander when he made a semblance by conjoining the 2 frames of infinitely small and infinitely great entities. Next paper was presented by Florence Mins. And Florence Mins is a research scholar in Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. He spoke on Ishwar Pranidhan, a theistic means of yoga in Seshwar Sāṅkhya. He explained the aphorisms of the yoga philosophy of Patanjali and talked about main sections of Yoga Sutra, such as Samadhipad, Sadhanapad, and Kaivalyapad, etc. Next, there was Shalini Arora, research scholar, Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University, who presented her paper on the topic spiritual practices in Shankaracharya's Advaita as a derivative of Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Shalini showed that Advaita tradition as well meditational practice played a pivotal role in attainment of self-realization. Then there was Dr. D. Pramod, Dean in Research and Development, Malla Reddy University, Hyderabad, Telangana. Thought processing. Sorry for the disturbance. Yeah, and next there were some papers presented by a few more presenters. Those papers, one in Hindi. One was by Dr. Rajan, assistant professor, Kaling Institute of Social Sciences, Bhubaneswar. And Rajan spoke on yoga, Sanskriti, and hermeneutics. He showed that how one can lead one's life in this society by applying the methods of yoga and culture and hermeneutics all together. And next, there was Mahesh Sharma Shastri Kaushalendra Das, and he's an assistant professor in Darshan Vibhag, Jagadguru Ramanandacharya, Rajasthan Sanskrit Vishwavidyalaya, Jaipur. And he presented his paper on the topic Sāṅkhya or Yoga ka Saman Sambandh. And in his paper, he showed that how Sāṅkhya and Yoga should be considered as a light system, and on which he reflected upon in detailed. So lastly, in technical session 1, there was one paper presented in Sanskrit language, and that was by Avasthi S. She's a research scholar in Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kaladi, Kerala. And she presented her paper in Sanskrit language on the topic Yoga Darshane Moksha Sankalpaha, and talked about the concept of moksha in Yoga Darshan. Then we had one more technical session that was completely in online mode, and that was compared by Dr. Priyanka Mishra. So in that session, the first presenter was Shaista Akhtar, and she's research scholar of Department of Philosophy, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. And she briefly focused on Patanjali's Yoga Sutra with a thorough analysis of 8 limbs of yogic meditation, and insisted on the practical method of purification and self-control for the self-realization. Then the second speaker was Biplab Malik from Ramakrishna Mission, Vivekananda Educational and Research Institute. And he presented his paper on the topic, Who is Bound and Liberated in Sāṅkhya Philosophy. Biplab Malik presented his views and attempted to explain how, according to Sāṅkhya philosophy, bondage and liberation occur for both Purush and Prakriti. Then there was Anshu, a research scholar from the Department of Pulmonary Medicine, AIMS, Rishikesh, India. And she spoke on effectiveness of Yoga Nidra in stress and anxiety, a review. And Anshu focuses on how Yoga Nidra as a powerful technique is a complete physical, mental, and emotional relaxation. Then Ramesh Kumar, PhD scholar from Pharmacology Department, AIMS Rishikesh, presented his paper on an integrated yogic approach for autonomic diabetic neuropathy, a review. And he argues that conventional care and physical therapies, both separately, are less effective, and concluded that higher quality trial with yogic approach will be effective in the management of autonomic diabetic neuropathy. He also spoke about further research that needs to be done in this area. And then Rishikesh Chauhan, a research scholar from Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University, presented his paper on the topic, the notion of Adhyas, the notion of Adhyas and Vairagya in Yoga philosophy. Rishikesh in his paper tried at a conceptual analysis of the process of yoga, and it was really a good attempt to show that the process of yoga, guiding principle of self-realization and enlightenment, was really a great process in this regard. And another one was Shivrachit Mishra. And Shivrachit Mishra is a research scholar from Department of Philosophy and Religion, B.H.U. And he spoke on the concept of Sāṅkhya Yoga. Shivrachit highlighted the Sāṅkhya Karika's metaphysical and epistemological perspectives, insisting the fact that yoga philosophy is essentially a science of the human mind. Then Kavita Kumari, a research scholar of this department, presented her paper on Sāṅkhya versus Sāṅkhya ki Disha. And she discussed the theoretical aspects of Sāṅkhya philosophy and its practical use. In her paper, she established that yoga is practicing Sāṅkhya's theoretical aspects in its proper sequence. She referred Bhagavad Gita in this regard as well. And then Pooja Tripathi, a research scholar in this department again, she presented her paper on the topic Yoga Atmang Samadhi, and she gave emphasis on the relevance of yoga in this technological era. She talked about Samadhi, its variations, the obstacles that come in the path of Samadhi, etc. And she tried explaining the consequences of Samadhi in the light of Taittiriya Upanishad. Then there was Vaishali Srivastava, who presented her paper I'm sorry for the interruption and disturbance. Yeah, so Vaishali Srivastava presented her paper on the topic अष्टांगिक योग के द्वितीय साधन के रूप में नियम का स्वरूप व उपयोगिता. And Vaishali basically discussed the second step of Ashtanga Yoga, that is Niyam. And Yoga is Seshwar Sāṅkhya, she said, and showed that how Niyam is an indispensable and necessary part of the Ashtanga Yoga, and without which Kaivalya cannot be attained. And lastly, there was Reena Rao, research scholar of this department, presented her paper on the topic Srimad Bhagavad Gita mein Vardit Karma Yoga. And she delivered her presentation about the Nishkam Karma and its practical pertinence as well. 3 more papers were presented by Shubham Kumar Mishra, Rahul Kumar Rai, and Sumit Pandey. All 3 presenters are the research scholars of this department. And this was the very brief report of the complete conference. So thank you so much, one and all.
I have already told that this session is being presided by Professor D. Gangadhar sir. So first of all, let me give a brief introduction of board dignitaries. First of all, I would like to talk about Professor Braj Sinha sir, founding head of the Department of Religious Studies at University of Saskatchewan. Professor Sinha has authored and presented numerous papers at national and international conferences. His research areas are Indological studies, Buddhism, and Indo-Judic studies. Apart from this, I would like to invite respected president of this session, Professor D.A. Gangadhar sir, former head, Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University. He has authored a number of books. He has published more than 70 papers in reputed national and international journals of philosophy. Presently, he is vice chairman of Indian Philosophical Congress. Now, Gangadhar sir, this in-house. Hello, sir.
क्या चीज उनका प्रेजेंट करना है, एक सेकंड. Sir, give us a minute, please. Sure. Yes, sir. So could you hear me, please? Hello? Professor B.H.U. Sinha, sir? Am I audible to you? Sorry, you're not audible at all, sir. Are you talking to us, sir? He is. Sir, we have started sharing your screen, that PPT file that you have shared with us. We are already telecasting it here. What he's doing.
Ma'am, actually there is a special mode in which Braj sir has joined. So we may ask him to rejoin AP. That can help us. His mode is companion mode. So that may be seem a
He is
little
not muted,
problematic.
I think. Professor Sinha, could you please check whether you are muted or unmuted? On your screen, you can see a symbol of a mic.
You ask him to leave, then again join.
What's the point? We are so sorry, sir. We are not able to hear you properly. Could you please rejoin, sir? Once again. Sir, please leave the meeting and join us again. Professor Sinha, am I audible to you? Presentation audio. Yeah, he's calling. Hello? Answer. Sir, you are visible but not audible to us.
Ma'am, in the companion mode, no one can listen to him until he, rejoin again.
There is one mic symbol, then one video symbol, then one 60, then one hands, one arrow symbol, one 3 dot. Okay. See, yeah. Then in that, sir, in that line, just the last one, the last left, the ultimate last button. Tap that. That is the symbol of mic. Sir, go left, go left, go left, go left. Then CC, then the left, one video symbol. Yeah, then one mic symbol, right? Yeah, touch that. Touch that, sir. Yeah, the last one. No. Sir, no. Touch it again. The left one is like a mic symbol. It was of the video, sir. Just left to it, there is the symbol of audio, the mic. Touch that. So there is no mic symbol on your screen showing to you. It means you have not given permission to your system. How can I do? So leave the meeting again and please rejoin us. Yeah, please, sir. Yeah, sure, sir. I'm here.
Yeah, I got it. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, you are perfectly audible in our side.
All right. So Okay, so are we ready to proceed? And can you tell me when you want me to start?
Professor Sinha. Professor Sinha. Professor Sinha,
Yes, sir.
are you okay?
I- Okay, so do you want me to start now?
Okay, okay.
Okay, all right. Am I assuming Dr. Mishra and Dr. Gangadhar is there?
Okay.
I will now turn off the phone then. I'm going to stop the phone because it is interfering. I'm sorry, I'm not quite certain who is present there. So let me begin, first of all, saying greetings to you all and expressing my deep gratitude to the Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University, for giving me this opportunity. I particularly like to acknowledge Dr. Ananda Mishra, and I understand and assume that Dr. Gangadhar is also present on the dais at this point. That's what my assumption. Unfortunately, I'm not able to see you people, but please accept my greetings. I have very pleasant past association with the department. In many ways, what I am, who I am, is a gift from people from that department, including Dr. T.R.V. Murthy, my guru, Dr. Sivaraman, and many other colleagues that I've known. So I will try to continue with my presentation as quickly as possible, given the time constraint as well as the constraints of the technology that I have. First of all, I know this is a valedictory session. So valedictory address is supposed to be an address concluding the conference's accomplishments and saying goodbye to the participants, acknowledging their wonderful contributions to the exchange of ideas and deliberations. It is an act of bid-adieu, farewell, wishing you well in your future engagement of scholarly pursuit. It is pronouncement of a goodbye. That's what valedictory address is supposed to be. However, many of you may know there is a famous Beatles song which says, "You say goodbye and I say hello, hello, hello." So let me say that I wish to tell you, all of our colleagues in audience, all presenters, everybody who has been making significant contributions to this deliberation of the day. Instead of saying goodbye as a valedictory address, I will say hello. I say hello to you. I like to say hello to the reconstruction. These are my basic assumptions. So I like to say hello to reconstruction of philosophical enterprise. That's what I'm going to do today, a kind of reconstruction of the Sāṅkhya Yoga approach to Sarga. I'd like to extend to you all an invitation to re-engage in the rebuilding Indian philosophical paradigms by relating it to the contemporary context. I'd like to propose to you that the task of the philosophical reflection does not end by examining beauty and cohesiveness and consistency of a system, which is very important, we must do that. But the task is to explore deeper structures with an eye to make it relevant to contemporary philosophical debate with global significance. So philosophical enterprise and its task, I would suggest, I do believe that our task is not to engage in post-mortem of the ideas dead and gone, nor it is my aim to pronounce laudatory acknowledgements of the past, prostrations at the grand feet of the tradition and system, uncritical celebrations, and credulous commemorations. That's not what I'm intending to do. However, I do acknowledge the value of the past. I do see the significance of the past. I do like to suggest that my task, my objective, my goal is to engage with tradition in a creative dialogue by contextualizing it to our contemporary context. I look to stand on the shoulders of the past, seek the aid of the past, enlist the value of the tradition for the purposes of making it relevant to the present so that there can be a meaningful future, a meaningful philosophical future, a meaningful Indian philosophical future. In this task, I find classical Sāṅkhya Yoga playing a very important role, subject to our willingness to relate to it, the assumptions and premises with an open mind and reflective critical engagement. With these opening statements of my basic assumptions, let me reflect with you on an important dimension of Sāṅkhya Yoga philosophical pronouncements. I would like to, if you are not able to see your slides, so I will be on the slide number 3, that is the problematic. Basic problematic. What is the problematic? I would say basic untenability of the Sarga theory as we have understood it. Problematic character of the duality of transcendental consciousness and empiric consciousness, Buddhi Ahankara structure, Purusha and Buddhi Ahankara structure. Problematic consists of acknowledgement of contradictions inherent in the way the Sāṅkhya thought is understood and interpreted. I like to suggest these contradictions will dissipate if we look at Sarga not as a cosmological phenomena, but a phenomenological phenomena. And that is something that I like to present to you and propose to you for your consideration. By phenomenological phenomena, I mean that Sarga is an articulation of the unfoldment of the world, Prakriti in its unmanifest and manifest form, to the empiric consciousness, Buddhi Ahankara structure. This empiric consciousness both appropriates the world out there and constitutes itself as it discovers its temporality, that is being emergent in temporal framework, which is concurrent with the emergence and opening up of the empiric world to the cognizing consciousness. So whether there is a creation out there, whether there is an evolution out there of a real world or not, that's not the point. The point is that the cognizing consciousness creates the world. It is to this cognizing consciousness that the world appears. That's what Sarga is, the appearance of the world to the cognizing consciousness. This empiric consciousness, so engaged, becomes subject to the seductive dance of the world. You know that paradigm, Prakriti, from which it needs to extricate itself for accomplishing its ultimate goal. That is, the dissolution of the Sarga, to become dissociated with the Sarga, so that transcendental consciousness, Purusha, shine its own intrinsic luminosity, if I may say so that. On slide 4 then, I talk about consciousness, pure consciousness, Purusha, a bit briefly. That is a temporal dimension of transcendental consciousness. That's what I like you to consider. So within Sāṅkhya Yoga, and that is important because the empiric consciousness is completely temporal and transcendental consciousness is atemporal. It has a role to play because empiric consciousness cannot engage in Sarga process without the reflective signness of the consciousness of the Purusha. So within Sāṅkhya Yoga frame of reference, Purusha may be described, or you all know that, as the pure subject or the transcendental consciousness, which is the formal ontological ground of all conscious acts and experiences. This pure subject is not the experiencer or the agent of any activity or willing. It is the experiencer, but not the agent of any activity or willing. However, in its embodiment, as a sariri, as a subject, which is at the same time well involved, it is none other than the agent of all activity and willing. So there is this dialectic of the Purusha and Buddhi Ahankara structure on the other side. This slide 5, so 8 temporal dimensions of transcendental consciousness continued. As such, the world-involved subject is essentially subjectivity. Buddhi Ahankara structure, subject as activity, the subject which is engaged in activity. So subjectivity as embodiment is essentially the existence. It is that which is there. Pure subject or transcendental consciousness is real, but is not exhausted by existence. The existence is that which is both real and active. Actuality, that is being existent and active, is the mark of the subjectivity, subject as activity. Pure subject, Purusha, consciousness, however, transcends the mode of actuality. The mode of being of pure subject or transcendental consciousness, Purusha, thus inherently to be distinguished from that of subjectivity, Buddhi Ahankara structure. That much is known. Let's think about, let's reflect on the temporality of the empiric consciousness and the problem it creates for human reality. Slide 6. To maintain this essential difference in the mode of being of subject as embodiment, that is Buddhi Ahankara structure, and of being a pure subject, Purusha, is important. For Sāṅkhya Yoga, the former constitutes the core of our empiric being as a manifold of world experience, Adhyavashaya, and is what is pre-thematically aware of itself. Buddhi, it knows it is. It is in and through, and it is through knowing that it creates its ahankara. It is in and through the mode of reflection. Jigyasa, the very first karika, it is a reflection that Buddhi comes to be self-aware and constitutes as such the core of the I-ness. And in the self-awareness, ahankara arises. It declares its essential I-ness as that which is possessed of thematizing capacity and is aware of itself as such, self-awareness. It is in this mode of reflection that it also discovers itself as that which is the world involved through its faculties, manas and indriyas, etc. Thus, subjectivity as existent is the structure of the world involvement which has its material ontological basis in embodiment, that is the sariri. This subject, this empirical subject is very much temporal in its existence. This temporality is its character and its limitation. The empiric subject, the Buddhi Ahankara, is definitionally well involved and includes both bodily acts or behavior and different forms of acts of consciousness as modified by the structure of the embodiment. Subjectivity, subject as activity, then, is neither more nor less than these bodily acts and modes of consciousness as they are expressed by the I, ahankara, as they are lived concretely and immediately by the subject aware of itself, that is self-awareness. This is a fundamental act of reflection. The term reflection, I want you to pay attention, because for me, reflection, jigyasa, has two dimensions, the empirical and transcendent. So this is the fundamental act of reflection by which the empiric subject experiences the world and also constitutes itself. But we will discover it is by the same act of reflection that it is also able to transcend its own temporal dimension and limitation. Slide 8, then, the emergence of reflection, jigyasa, as a mode of transcendence. However, it is precisely in the subject's act of reflection, the being of buddhi, that the possibility of the recovery of the transcendental subject transcending the act of self-consciousness and the realm of subjectivity opens up. It is precisely where Buddhi is the realm where we become engaged with the world. That's where also is the opportunity and possibility of transcending. The mode of being of self as reflection, jigyasa by Buddhi, is also the mode of acquiring the discriminative awareness, viveka, by the self-reflecting self. In the mode of self-reflection, the self-reflective self makes the pre-thematic awareness of the bodily acts and conscious acts thematically conscious as object of the self-reflecting self. This is a mode of transcendence or objectification of the realm of subjectivity. The subject looks at itself as an object. In a way, it goes out of itself. This structure, this is a transcendence, but it is of an empirical nature. This structure of transcendence by reflection, where it goes out of itself to engage with the empirical world, has its phenomenological correlate in the discriminative awareness viveka, which is a condition for the recovery of the transcendental consciousness. I would suggest if the empiric consciousness, the buddhi, goes out to the transcendental consciousness, in the process it becomes like transcendental consciousness. The reflection is the rational mode of discovery of the otherness of the world, otherness of the self. Contemplative form of reflection, again jigyasa, is the transcendental mode of recovery of the transcendental consciousness. The relationship of otherness of the pure subject to the realm of subjectivity, subject as embodiment, is also the primary mode of the being of pure consciousness or the transcendental subject consciousness as a relation of no relation, bereft all contents. Slide 9. The emergence of reflection, jigyasa, as a mode of transcendence. Thus, the relationship of the transcendental consciousness to the things and the beings of the world, including the being of the buddhi and ahankar, as constitutive of subjectivity, as of a peculiar kind, It is a relation of no relation, or otherness, anya yoga. It is precisely what things of the world are not. The relationship is not external, but it is dialectical. This I want to emphasize. It is a relationship of mutual opposition and cooperation. That's what I mean by dialectic. Hegelian dialect has it in an embryonic form. I think here we find it in much more deeper understanding. It is a relationship of mutual opposition and cooperation, of thematic exclusion but operational dependence. Transcendental consciousness or the pure subject is not internally and necessarily related to the world of subjectivity. Rather, it is a relation of no relation or otherness. It is this relationship of otherness that gives rise to the emergence of subjectivity, that is buddhi ahankar structure, at this specific moment in the dialectical relation between the world and pure consciousness. This subjectivity, the principle of I-ness, also constitutes the core of temporality. It is a being which is essentially temporal. The actuality of our concrete experiential existence also provides the mode of the discernment of the temporality. Herein, we discover that the past is my past in the present. The past is my past in the present. This synthesis of temporality as a mindness of subjectivity, ahankar structure, is an ontological relation which unites the past to the present. The Sāṅkhya Yoga ontology would then claim that the past and present are identical, would never claim such a thing. Evidently, past is not present. There is a radical distinction between the two dimensions of temporal existence. But despite this fact that they are not identical, they are internally related to my subjectivity. As my past and my present, they manifest as lived entity. That's how I say empiric consciousness is the very fulcrum of the Sāṅkhya. It is my world that I'm talking about. This is my world from which I need to free myself. The transcendental consciousness and the temporal structure. So what is the relationship of the transcendental pure subject Purusha, which is ontologically speaking, other than the world-involved subject, Buddhi-Ahankar, to the temporal structuring of the world-involved subject? What is that relationship? You ask that question, hopefully. And within the Sāṅkhya Yoga framework, I would argue time and temporal relations of the past, present, and future cannot, ontologically speaking, be grounded in pure consciousness of the transcendental subject, which is intrinsically non-temporal. Any attempt to locate the ground of temporal relations in the transcendental subject Purusha, which is essentially non-temporal, will imply the reduction of the temporal dimension of being to pure duration or non-endurance, which is not a case of endurance. So I come to slide 11, reflection. I talked about reflection in a very significant way. I like to suggest reflection itself is dialectical activity, and it has two dimensions. Now, that dimension I want to make it very clear now. It is a reflection as discovery and reflection as recovery. In the first mode, reflection, it discovers itself and it discovers the world. In second mode, its reflection, it recovers its original form. That is the pure consciousness. Sāṅkhya Yoga points out that only a unity which has a built-in structure and differentiation can account for temporal performance and temporal change. That's the empiric consciousness. That's the reflection in its discovery mode. Prakriti is postulated as a realm of being which has such a structure. Within the Sāṅkhya Yoga frame of reference, the subjectivity as the principle of I-ness is the ground of the ontological distinction of past, present, and future. As my past, my present, my future. Precisely because this principle as its objective reference point in Prakriti manifest and manifest the world, which is the ground of temporal differentiation. But also, it is temporal permanence, that is the parinami nityata and change. Pure consciousness or the transcendental subject, however, is separated from this self-constituting unity of temporal experience in a radical way. Purusa is not temporal, either at change or at permanence. It is immovable constant, that is the Kutastha. It is not affected by past, present, and future mode of being, for it is what it is, unaffected, self-identical, unchanged, and unmoved. There is a past for a being who is what he is not, and is not what he is, for a being who is in a state of dialectical relation to something which is of the nature of an other to it. So the being and another to it. This being in dialectical relation of otherness with Purusha, Buddhi-Ahankar, is the necessary condition for the possibility of the strange experience of lived time as both unity and disjunction. Pure consciousness, transcendent subject, on the other hand, is a unity unto itself, a unity in isolation, Kutastha, its own being. This brings me to the slide 11. Two aspects of reflection, reflection as discovery and reflection as a recovery. Building on that distinction, reflection and transcendence, I like to talk about it. Originally, reflection is the mode of the creation of the world. jigyasa in the first mode. Reflection, the second mode, contemplation, it is the mode of transcendence. So self-reflection being the mode of objectification of the self-reflecting self is also the mode of the recovery of the transcendental subject or transcendental consciousness as the formal ontological ground of the self-reflecting self. This is the point I like to make. It is the mode of reflection that the two it is in the mode of reflection that the true dialectical character of the being of the empiric subject, buddhi, can be grasped. We have already noted this point. However, before bringing out the full implications for the transcendental consciousness, let's attempt to grasp its significance for the subject, which is essentially temporal. In the reflective mode of being, the subject discovers that as subjectivity, it is present to various kinds of objects in its phenomenal mode of existence. It discovers that in being present to the world, it is out there in the world of its own past and future. Past and future constitute the existential background over and against which subjectivity as adhyavashaya operates as being present to the world of things, which it uses for its own purposes. Thus, in reflection, the subject comes to see that it is absorbed in the objects to which it is present, and thereby it is grasped that an aspect of its existence is to present to and present outside of the multitude of objects. However, the dialectic of reflection also demands that by the same act that the subject objectifies itself, it also comes to grasp its formal grounding in the pure subject or the transcendental consciousness. That's the beauty of the Sāṅkhya Yoga proposal. It is precisely this formal ontological grounding in the pure consciousness that constitutes the possibility of transcendence in the mode of self-reflection. The moment of reflection, this moment of reflection for the empiric subject is also the moment of discriminative awareness. Viveka. In the discriminative awareness, the subject discovers not only the essential otherness of its existence, but it also comes to recover its own original mode of being, its own formal ontological grounding in pure consciousness. In this single instance of the being of consciousness, the subject of the object distinction is totally obliterated. Here, in the mode of discriminative awareness, the subject is precisely that which subjectively identical with itself, and therefore is not an independent object to itself. The Sāṅkhya is not concerned at all with the world in itself, except so far as it is instrumental in the discrimination of the isolated or pure Purusha. Thus, in the act of reflection, we discern two specific moments: the moment of discovery and the moment of recovery. Let me make that proposal. The first mode of reflection is operative within the framework of otherness, where consciousness sees itself as something out of itself, as something in along with the world of objectivity. This is a mode of discovery of the being of the self as not self. In this discovery of the essential being of the self as not self, that is buddhi ahankara structure, the self comes to constitute self as of the world. That's what we come. Reflection as discovery, the being of the buddhi, is essentially the mode of the constitution of the self as not self. Reflection as discovery is the realm of actuality and activity, and as such, it belongs to the present, for present alone is the moment of activity and actuality. Activity is the mark of otherness of the subject and the object. It is a mode of subject's acting on the object. It is precisely for this reason that reflection is activity of discovery. As activity of discovery is also the mode of self-transcendence of the reflective self. In reflection, as discovery, the reflective self turns itself as an object of reflection. However, contrasted with this is a mode of reflection as recovery. Reflection as recovery isolates itself from the contents of consciousness. It is a mode of disposition of the objective content of reflection founded on individuality, that is Sāṅkhya. Idea of the Vairagya entering into the frame of reference. Reflection as Viveka, discrimination, is concomitant with Vairagya, disposition. Reflection as recovery, it is not Vairagya of things, it is a Vairagya of the engagement with the world that opens itself to the world that I have claimed for myself. Reflection as recovery is pure contemplation and makes possible the being of consciousness in its pure form. The being of consciousness in its pure form, when seen from the perspective of temporality, manifests the very characteristic of eternity precisely in the sense of non-temporality, that is timelessness. It is a dissolution of the inner structure of reflection and activity. There is no more activity. The subjectivity ceases to be. It is in the present, but it happens in the present. It is the dissolution of the inner structure of reflection and activity in the present, which comprises the past and future as an ontological relation within the structure of subjectivity. Reflection as contemplation is deliverance from activity of the present. Present itself undergoes a metamorphosis, that it comes to be a pure present, or a now with capital N, which is essentially activity. It is a present that is there forever. The present in which I am, pure being, pure consciousness that I am. While the now of the subjectivity as temporality is always fragmentary and incomplete, the now with the capital N of the transcendental subject is essentially limitless in the sense that it is complete. It is infinite presence. It must here be noted that this transcendence of the temporal now is itself a function of the present. The dialectical character of the relationship of the world and the consciousness is nowhere more concretely discernible than in this structure of the present, with capital P. The present, which is eminently the moment of the world involvement and subject activity, is also at once the moment of the transcendence of the world of subjectivity. It is in the present that the self-reflecting self undergoes a complete metamorphosis. It emerges essentially what it is, as a pure consciousness, bereft of all vicissitudes, dispersions, contradictions of the realm of objective being. The content goes out. In this sense, Sāṅkhya Yoga, I will call in the present, this happens, so I will call Sāṅkhya Yoga is a soteriology of the present. Many of you understand that. For some students, I would say it is a salvational science. It is a salvational soteriology. It is a salvational science which is engaged with the present, that there is salvation in the present, not in the future. That distinguishes Indian frame of reference from the eschatological salvation of the Western world. Salvation attained in the present, and thus a soteriology which is non-eschatological. Slide 12, please. Transcendence in the moment of present. The non-eschatological soteriology, I would like to conclude here very quickly, is not without reason that the system speaks of contemplation on the moment as the mode of the being of eternity. This moment, the moment of the present on which the reflected self reflects, is also when the whole universe seems to undergo a radical change. The world is no more the same that self has known. This is also the moment of the dawn of the discriminative awareness, which coincides with the transcending of the realm of temporality, the realm of limited now, into the realm of eternity, the realm of eternal now. The realm of Purusha, in isolation from the world of activities, is the realm of eternity. It is the mode of being the infinitude. Let me conclude quickly, if you give me a moment. So, transcendence, slide 3:13, transcendence in the moment of the present, non-eschatological, sociologic continues, in the mode of being of subjectivity, the mutual otherness of the subject and object, or consciousness in its content, is constantly and steadily overcome. It is subject to systematic disappearance, and this is what is implied by becoming aware of something. Awareness or experience, and in a sense, the very structure of the disappearance of consciousness as consciousness, as entailing the otherness of the subject and object. This is a mode of the being of impering consciousness, which is always consciousness of chitta, buddhi, etc. However, phenomenologically speaking, the structure of the disappearance of the consciousness discernible in the experience of temporal becoming or temporality also provides a clue to the transcendence of temporality. If empiric consciousness loses itself partially in the experience of temporality, it loses itself completely in the experience of the eternity. Thus is accomplished through self-reflection or critical reflection. This is accomplished through self-reflection or critical reflection as a mode of transcendence, which thus seems intrinsic to the very structure of consciousness as reflection. The soteriology of the present, as exemplified by Sāṅkhya, suggests a relationship of the mutual reciprocity between the mundane and the transcendent. The relationship of the world of temporality and transcendent is not of mere opposition and conflict. Rather, the relationship is one of opposition and cooperation, conflict and complement. The dialectic that I see to be the very fundamental basis and accomplishment of the beginning of the jigyasa in reflection as discovery and termination of the jigyasa in the form of recovery. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to convey to you my little limited understanding of the Sāṅkhya thought within the context of our contemporary chronological idiom, where cosmological understanding of Sarga can become problematic. Once again, I want to express my deepest gratitude to you all for being here and engaging me in some kind of deliberative engagement. Thank you so much, you all, the audience, and Dr. Mishra, Dr. Gangadharji, and everybody else. I'm sorry I'm not able to see you all, and I'm not able to express my gratitude in any other way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your informative lecture. Now, I would like to invite the president of the session, Professor D. Gangadhar, sir, please. Sir, you are not audible?
Yes, I am audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
let me say a few words. Okay. I'm thankful to Kalpana
Thank you, sir.
to give me this opportunity, inspired by Professor Anand Mishra ji, to be associated with this highly brilliant scholars gathering, including the last speaker, chief speaker, Professor Braj Sinha ji. He is known to me for quite a long time. For this few periods of years, I am not able to contact him, but now I'm seeing him face to face on the line. Okay, really, I feel proud that Sinha has given a very brilliant presentation, not only presentation, but a critical analysis of Sāṅkhya Yoga system of Indian system of philosophy. He has given several new points. He has opened our eyes to look at the Sāṅkhya Yoga philosophy in a different angle. Besides the traditional view of Sāṅkhya, we have to go a very critical and reflective thinking over the Sāṅkhya. That is the foundation of yoga, that which helps us for the chitta vritti nirodha. So he has really very correctly pointed out that this theory of yoga and Sāṅkhya from temporal dimension of transcendental consciousness brings us two things: the discovery and recovery of the consciousness. Let us ponder over this way of thinking about these classical systems of philosophy of yoga. Really, it is very highlighting and very encouraging and spirited lecture as Professor Sinha has given us. Really, I was wondering that this is the International Yoga Day for us all. The whole world is celebrating it because UNESCO has recognized its International Yoga Day. Now, you see that let us have why we need yoga, why the world needs yoga. Because there are certain things in the whole world going on everywhere, in all the parts of the world. Once we talk about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, then other way we find that so many conflicting things, ideas, and maybe propaganda, maybe reality going on in the whole world. So really we need samabhav, samatva bhav, oneness in order to establish the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. How is it possible if we consider yoga as a final pathway leading towards this oneness? Then we find the solution, the recovery. That is, this healthy mind only lives in a healthy body. So first of all, yoga gives, in order to make a chitta vritti nirodha, a healthy body, how to do it, and the Ashtanga Yoga pathways. So this way we have got an opportunity to be highlighted, to be inspired, not only by the yoga practices, but also that in what way it gives us its valuable implications to society, to the whole world, in order to be Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This is the need of the hour, that the whole world is in confusion. And to remove the confusion, we need that there should be a way. And here in Indian thought, Indian wisdom, we have got the yoga system, which has a very solid foundation of Sāṅkhya philosophy. So certainly today's talk given by Professor Braj Sinha ji, very impressive, very highlighting to the issues. In what way we should think about the philosophical issues. Now there is no time to give on only emphasis on the classical interpretations of the systems, but we have to open a new way, new pathway, so that our minds, the great, brilliant young scholars, should be impressive to think the ideas, the theories of philosophy in a better and better way. With these remarks, I certainly say to Braj Sinha that let us come to the position in order to understand a very elementary sadhu's couplet who has given a message to the whole world. Let us have that Pothi Pari Pari Jagamua Pandit Bhayo na koi Dhai Yakha Prem ka Padhai so Pandit ko. So why we need this? The knowledge system must work as a recovery of our transcendence, and that can only be brought through our the affection and love and equality, samabhav, samatva bhav, and this is called in the Bhagavad Gita samatvam yogam uchyate. All the things to be united in order to make man happy, in order to establish the world community, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We have to be same mental state, and that can only be built up by yogic practices and yogic asanas, and most properly the pranayam, which brings us mind, opens its the avenues in different ways. So thank you very much. I must thank Professor Anand Mishra, head of the department, and many of our students who are here for listening us from the very morning. I was listening to some of the lectures I heard, listened very carefully, and I found very relevant. Professor Bhatt, in the beginning, the opening of the seminar, he has tried to give us enlightened ideas to ourselves, but he could not complete because of the some problem. But all the participants have given their own creative mind to us to think over in a way of the Sāṅkhya. Thank you very much. Again, I say pranam to Braj Sinha ji for giving us an opportunity to listen once again. I pray that he should all the. Are you here, sir, in India?
No, I'm in Saskatoon in Canada.
That we are very. That's why we are very proud of you that you have given us your valuable ideas. Thank you so much. And this is the place of holy feet of Mahamana Malviyaji Maharaj, who brought from very beginning from the people great minds from all over the world to be here in Varanasi University. And luckily today you are here in maybe online only to the Department of Philosophy. I will ask Mr. Anand Mishra to invite you physically, phenomenologically, not only phonologically, but empirically to be present here with us sometimes in future. May God help us. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I thank all these the colleagues in the Department of Philosophy who are working hard day and night for making this again philosophy department to the Center of Advanced Study in Philosophy. May Lord Shiva
Thank you so much.
to bring this Center of Advanced Study in Philosophy in future. Thank you so much, sir, again.
Thank you so much, sir, for your presidential remark. Now, I would like to call upon Dr. Shruti Mishra, ma'am, for a formal vote of thanks. Please come, ma'am.
धन्यवाद कल्पना. धन्यवाद की औपचारिकता कहने को बस औपचारिकता भर होती है, बहुत ही द्वंद्व भरा कार्य होता है ये. किसी भी कार्यक्रम की गुणवत्ता का मानदंड ये होता है कि हम कितने कम संसाधनों में और कितने वृहद स्तर पर किसी कार्यक्रम का आयोजन कर पाए. और सिर्फ एक दिन की अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगोष्ठी का आयोजन करना और इतने वृहद स्तर पर, जबकि देश विदेश से तमाम लोग यहाँ पर एकत्रित हुए और उनके उद्बोधनों को सुनने का हमें अवसर मिला, ये वस्तुतः बहुत ही विशिष्ट था, बहुत ही. और मैं देख सकती हूँ कि पूरे दिन की कार्यक्रम जब अपने चरमोत्कर्ष पर है और इस मौसम में, इस ऋतु में इतनी गहमा गहमी, सबका इस तरीके का नियोजन और संयोजन मैं कह सकती हूँ कि कार्यक्रम निश्चित रूप से पूरी तरीके से सफल हुआ है। हम बहुत आह्लादित हैं कि हमारा श्रम सफल हुआ, और अध्यक्ष महोदय, उनकी सदा से ये इच्छा रहती है कि धन्यवाद ज्ञापन में उनका नाम न लिया जाए, लेकिन प्रस्थान बिंदु जो होता है, यानी जहां से बात आरंभ होती है, उसी की अवहेलना करके हम कैसे आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। तो इस कार्यक्रम के सूत्रधार यही हैं। कम संसाधन होने के बावजूद एक दिन का हमने अंतर्राष्ट्रीय इस संगोष्ठी का आयोजन किया। तो बात यहीं से आरंभ होती थी। हमारे समस्त विद्वान जिनके आगमन से यह कार्यक्रम सफल हुआ, सुबह आपने प्रोफेसर कृपा शंकर को सुना, वो अस्वस्थ थे, उन्होंने कहा कि मैं उन्हें जबरदस्ती ले आई। तो मेरा सौभाग्य है कि मैं जबरदस्ती भी करती हूँ और इतने वरिष्ठ आचार्य उसे स्वीकार कर लेते हैं। उसके बावजूद उन्होंने इतना सुंदर उद्बोधन दिया, तो ये हमारा सौभाग्य है। उसके बाद मेरे सारे सहयोगी गण, विशेष रूप से मैं डॉक्टर कल्पना, डॉक्टर नीति सिंह, जो कि इस अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगोष्ठी की ऑर्गेनाइजिंग सेक्रेटरी के तौर पर निरंतर मेरा सहयोग देती रही, हृदय से आभार। बहुत ही मुश्किल होता है तकनीकी सत्र को सही तरीके से संयोजित कर लेना। हम सबसे ज्यादा उसी को लेकर के भयभीत थे। तो डॉक्टर प्रियंका, डॉक्टर राहुल ने मिल करके जिस तरीके से इसको अंजाम दिया, मैं वाकई कहना चाहिए कि गदगद हूँ। बहुत ही सुंदर तरीके से समझ ही नहीं आया कि तकनीकी सत्र कितने कायदे से अपनी पूर्णता को प्राप्त हुआ। और डॉक्टर नीति सिंह इस धर्म दर्शन परिवार की सबसे छोटी सदस्य, बहुत ही ऊर्जावान है, बहुत ही ऊर्जस्विता से लेकर के किसी भी कार्य को बहुत अच्छे से अंजाम देती हैं। तो सबसे छोटा सदस्य विशेष कृपा पात्र भी होता है जिम्मेदारी के साथ ही। तो बहुत बहुत प्यार आपको, बहुत बहुत स्नेह है आपको। और आप लोगों का यदि सहयोग, कार्य सबके बटे होते हैं, लेकिन वो छोटी छोटी जिम्मेदारियां बहुत बड़ी होती हैं। तो इस कार्यक्रम को हमने इस अंजाम तक पहुंचाया। डॉक्टर राजीव लोचन बेहरा, ये भी सबसे छोटे सदस्य में से ही हैं। डॉक्टर बालेश्वर जी जो भी थे यहाँ पर चले गए हैं। मैडम डॉक्टर ज्योत्सना श्रीवास्तव मैम यहाँ पर उपस्थित हैं हमारी वरिष्ठ सदस्य के रूप में इसी परिवार की। और डॉक्टर श्री प्रकाश पांडे सर, आप लोगों की उपस्थिति भर हमें बहुत बड़ा नैतिक बल प्रदान करती है। सिर्फ आप लोगों का होना भर ही हमें इतनी ऊर्जा देता है कि हम पहाड़ चढ़ जाएं, झंडे गाड़ दें, कुछ इस तरीके से। तो फिलहाल चले गए हैं, लेकिन यहाँ पर उपस्थित थे डॉक्टर विवेक पांडे, डॉक्टर सरिता जी, इन सबकी शुभकामनाएं प्रत्यक्ष अप्रत्यक्ष रूप से निरंतर मिलती रहीं। साथ ही साथ मैं नाम लेना चाहूंगी अपने वरिष्ठ के, अपने विभाग के तमाम वरिष्ठ आचार्यों का, डॉक्टर आर.के. झा, डॉक्टर सच्चिदानंद मिश्र जी, जिनका प्रत्यक्ष अप्रत्यक्ष सहयोग यहाँ मिलता रहता है, डॉक्टर दुर्गेश चौधरी थे यहाँ पर, डॉक्टर प्रमोद बागड़े जी और डॉक्टर ग्रेस, सभी लोग जुड़े रहे इस कार्यक्रम से। और शिक्षकेतर वर्ग में डॉक्टर संजय गौड़, डॉक्टर श्री मोहन जी, नीरज जी, लाल बहादुर पटेल जी, सबका सहयोग निरंतर इस गर्मी में वो बार बार ले आ रहे थे। और आप स्वाभाविक रूप से अनुभव कर सकते हैं कि पानी यहाँ की सबसे बड़ी आवश्यकता हम अनुभव कर रहे हैं इन परिस्थितियों में। और उसके बाद मेरे प्रिय, बहुत ही प्यारे विद्यार्थियों, ये कार्यक्रम आपके लिए था, आपका था। और आपकी सहभागिता, आपका उत्साह, निश्चित रूप से ये सारा उपक्रम जो किया गया है वो आपके लिए ही किया गया है। तो इस क्रम में मैं नाम लेना चाहूंगी रजनीश, जो सुबह से बैठे हुए हैं लगातार, आशीष, जो मतलब विशेष रूप से जिनका बहुत योगदान रहता है, तो रजनीश मिश्र, आशीष आनंद, और अरविंद जो अभी यहाँ पर नहीं है। अब मैं विद्यार्थियों से ऊपर उनका नाम लेना चाहूंगी, नाम उनका आया है जरूर, लेकिन वसंता कॉलेज फॉर वुमेन में बहुत सौभाग्य की बात है कि बहुत लोकप्रिय विद्यार्थी शोध छात्र यहाँ के रहे हैं और वहां पर उनकी नियुक्ति हो चुकी है। एक जिम्मेदारी वो निभा रहे हैं एक सहायक आचार्य के तौर पर, लेकिन जब भी यहाँ पर कोई कार्यक्रम होता है एक परिवार के सदस्य की तरफ वो आ जाते हैं और पूरा बीड़ा पूरी जिम्मेदारी के साथ वो उठाते हैं, हंसते मुस्कुराते हुए। तो वो ऐसे सूत्र हैं जो सारे सूत्रों को जोड़ने का कार्य करते हैं। अरविंद यहाँ पर नहीं है, लेकिन उनकी कार्यशैली, उनका परिश्रम, सब कुछ जो है वो निश्चित रूप से यहाँ पर ध्यान करने योग्य चीज है। तो अरविंद को मैं बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देना चाहूंगी। और साथ ही साथ इस वृहद कार्यक्रम के अंतर्गत रिपोर्ट तैयार करने का एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण कार्य किया राजलक्ष्मी तिवारी, आकांक्षा प्रजापति, अभिनव तिवारी, काजल पांडे, सिद्धिदात्री। मुझे नहीं पता कि बच्चे भी यहाँ पर हैं या नहीं। आप सबको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। साथ ही साथ वॉलेंटियर के तौर पे यहाँ पर हमारी बच्चियां हैं पूजा त्रिपाठी, वैशाली श्रीवास्तव, राहुल राय, पुनीत यादव, अंकित जायसवाल, शिखा चौबे, आप कोमल शाह, आप सभी बच्चों को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। बहुत सुंदर रंगोली बनाई है आप लोगों ने, जिनका भी योगदान रहा है। बहुत सारा आशीर्वाद, बहुत सारा स्नेह। ये भी एक कहना चाहिए कि एक ऐसी कला है जो अवसर अवसर पर दर्शन के विद्यार्थी जो हैं अब इस रूप में दिखाते हैं। तो बहुत देर न करते हुए सिर्फ इतना ही कहूंगी, योग एक दिन का विषय नहीं है, योग नहीं, यह एक दिवस का, ध्यान सुनिएगा, पुनरावृत्ति नहीं करूंगी, योग नहीं, यह एक दिवस का जीवन अनुसंधान का, मीन अक्षी, मीन मछली, अक्षी आंख, मीन अक्षी पर लक्ष्य साधते अर्जुन के संधान का, यह अनुशासन तन मन का है, यह अनुशासन तन मन का है। कहते हैं क्षुरस्य धारा निशिता दुरत्यया दुर्गम पथस्थ कवयोः वदन्ति, कवि ऋषि होता है, ऐसा माना जाता रहा है। तो उस छुरे की धार पर हम चले क्यों? दुनिया में तो बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जो बड़ी प्रिय लगने वाली हैं, हम उस रास्ते पर चले। छुरे की धार पर आग में जाने की जरूरत क्या है? लेकिन नहीं, यह अनुशासन तन मन का है, हर एक पल के जीवन का है। दैन्य और दुर्बलता त्यागे, दैन्य और दुर्बलता त्यागे नर के स्वसम्मान का। तो मेरा उद्बोधन है कि उस योगी बनने की दिशा में आप प्रतिपल कदम बढ़ाएं। योगी के जीवन से बढ़कर के कोई जीवन नहीं होता, कर्म योग से बढ़कर के कोई योग नहीं होता। तो इसी के साथ इसके पूर्व की इस सत्र का मैं समापन करूं, इस संगोष्ठी का मैं समापन करूं, इस सभा को विसर्जित करूं। मेरा आग्रह है कि आप सभी लोग राष्ट्र गान के साथ संवेद स्वर में मेरे साथ आए। कुछ लोग यहाँ भी आए, कृपया। नीति, प्रियंका, कल्पना, आप सभी लोग आए। राहुल, राजीव आइए, आजा। जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंग, विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंग, तब शुभ नामे जागे, तब शुभ आशीष मांगे, गाहे तब जय गाथा, जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, जय हे, जय हे, जय हे, जय 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 हे।